government of the Republic of the Union of Myanmar will conduct a population and housing census in 2014, the first in almost 30 years, as the late one was conducted in 1983. The pilot census is scheduled from 30th March to 10 April in 2013, while the actual census will take place during the same period in 2014. And the nationwide census taking process is aimed at getting the exact number of population that is crucial for the country development and drawing plans. With the assistance of UN, close cooperation is being made with the UNFPA so as to meet international standards in collecting the census collection in Myanmar. Now, Myanmar is making preparatory measures for conducting census in 2014 in cooperation with development partners, especially UNFPA. Learned that your UNFPA will provide $5 million for conducting census in Myanmar. May I know you are providing programs of your UNFPA?
Well, UNFPA has been engaging with the government of Myanmar and supporting the census for many years. We supported the 1973 census, 1983 census, and now there has been 30 years since the last census took place, and it is high time for the country to conduct the census, and that's why UNFPA is committed to supporting the Myanmar census, which will take place in 2014. There are two kinds. I agree with you. There is a de facto census and de jure census. De facto census, which is the method that is going to be adopted for this census, is to count people where they are, in the place where they are in the night of the census. And the de jure census refers to the original place of residence. But this census is going to adopt a de facto, with one question related to de jure population.
Censuses are in each country, they are a very complicated process. And because it's a huge operation, and I think there is no perfect census. Everywhere you will face some difficulties, and you know, in Western European countries, in the neighboring countries, in Asia, everywhere. What you can do is to control as much as possible the risks and be well prepared. And the preparation is what we put really the emphasis on. We try to put in place the conditions for success first, and I think we try to support also the control of the risks. And Mohammed mentioned also the risk assessment. We will follow up together with the ministry also throughout the process the risks and try to control them. And I think this is what we can do. And then it really depends on the people of the country and on, you know, the dynamics, the support by the government, you know, in the end, how successful it will be. But as we see the progress and what is happening now, I think if we continue in this vein, I think the census will...
The data is going to be released at township level, at ward, at district, at state or region, so that other users of data can actually use it. And that is, once the census is done, then all this information is going to be compiled, published, and then given out to other users. So like the Electoral Commission, be it Ministry of Planning, Ministry of Health, can now use that data, but the actual data, the raw data, will be kept at the statistics agency. So in that case, this is why you are saying, Mr. Mohammed did say that the Electoral Commission will use it, but it will not be data on individual persons. It will be like, this township has this number of people. So once the census is done, then it will be published, put in publications or CDs, and then distributed out to all those organizations, institutions that may want to use it.
Worldwide, many countries try to encourage illegal immigrants to be enumerated also in the census process, because the governments would need to prepare programs, services for these illegal immigrants. Let me give you an example. In the United States of America, in 2000 census, they had special commercial programs on TV, in newspapers, to encourage illegal immigrants to register, to come out and be enumerated, especially in New York. We are based in New York, and I did part of the voluntary work and witnessed how they did it. So this is exactly like Werner and Paul said just now. This is basically to enumerate everybody that lives within the border of a country for service purposes, not for any other reason. Thanks.
Data is only accessible for the Ministry of Population. So is there any other government departments that will have the right to use the census data?
A very important principle. And I think this principle is being reflected in the new statistics law now before the Myanmar Parliament. And I hope that the census law, I hope it will be passed very soon. So if that's the case, if the law is being passed, then there is a legal guarantee that the data will be kept confidential, that the data will be only used for statistical purposes, and then the other ministries will not have access to the micro data. I think that's what the law says. Now maybe Dr. Lindy would elaborate more.
Your UNFPA will provide technical assistance and other advice in collecting census in Myanmar. May I know the providing assistance programs of UNFPA in collecting census in Myanmar?
We just recruited a chief a technical advisor for the census who is here in the country, and he will work in Naypyidaw with the Ministry of Immigration and Population to support them. We have reserved funds, $5 million, to support the government in the census. And we just had, during this week, the meeting of the International Technical Advisory Board with very prominent statisticians from the world, from China, from UK, from India, from Indonesia, who will also support the census and give technical advice.
The International Technical Advisory Board held the meeting in cooperation with the Ministry of Immigration and Population in Myanmar in Naypyidaw. I would like to know what plans have you adopted from the meeting?
We discussed the whole planning process of the census, the different stages. We discussed the pilot census, which will take place in 10 weeks, end of March, the questionnaire, and we visited the field to different villages and townships to see the preparations.
And my next question is, your UNFPA have many experience in conducting census, and what kind of methods will be applied in conducting census in Myanmar?
In Myanmar, the census will be conducted by enumerators. They will go from one household to the other with the questionnaires, and they will interview the household members and fill in the questionnaires. And they will then be collected on the village level and then on the township level and sent to the data processing center in Naypyidaw.
I would like to request you, please get a message to the Myanmar people collecting the nationwide census conducting in Myanmar.
please participate all in the census. It serves the people of Myanmar and it serves your beautiful country.
Extremely important. I think we have seen this in many countries, and the population characteristics, for example, the population in the working ages, we know what kind of education they will have, we know what kind of job they are holding, and we will know so that we can do appropriate manpower planning. We also will know the number of elderly, the number of young people, so that we can provide appropriate education as well as other services for these younger and dependent groups. At the same time, we also know the number of women in the population, the number of children they have, so that we can provide appropriate maternal health services to them. So in other words, population characteristics and its distribution in different townships, provinces is extremely important for the government to provide services to the population.
And I think we will face many problems and challenges in conducting census in Myanmar. How do you think, what are the major challenges in conducting census in Myanmar?
The major challenge is really to introduce the concept of population census to the population, because it has been a gap of 30 years. In other countries, when they do census every 5 years or 10 years, they are quite used to this counting of the population after a few years. But in Myanmar, I think this concept of doing a census need to be reintroduced. So an educational campaign is essential. At the same time, of course, we also need to deal with the fact that Myanmar has a very big population. Now we estimate to be about 60 million. It's a very large country. And to be able to get the information from each and every Myanmar citizens and residents and the people living in Myanmar at that time, and then to be able to collect and process the information, particularly from areas that are now going through conflict or some communal tension, is going to be a challenge. So, but I'm confident that these problems can be solved effectively.
And do you have experience in conducting census before?
I was responsible for the Singapore's census in the year 2000. Yeah. Singapore is much easier. It's a smaller place. And then we introduce a lot of IT technology, and it's a different environment and a different approach to taking census.
May I know what are the differences between conducting census in Myanmar and other nations?
I think the difference is the fact that in Myanmar we need to introduce the appropriate technology, IT technology, that's appropriate for Myanmar. In other countries, they have been a bit more advanced in putting the IT infrastructure. So many countries, particularly big countries, they are already using the PDA or the iPad or the internet for data collection. So at this stage, this kind of a data collection methodology, technology is not so appropriate for Myanmar yet. So for this round, we are still going for Myanmar, they still using a person-to-person approach in data collection.
41 questionnaires will be asked to the people in conducting census. What are the content of the questionnaire?
The 41 questions is now in the pilot census. The International Advisory Board had provided some guidelines on how to improve further. And then at this stage, they will ask for characteristics of the household, that means of the family, age, sex, and then we will ask the education and employment characteristics. We also ask about the fertility of the women. We ask for the migration patterns, and then the housing characteristics, as well as some of the issues related to people who pass away, as well as some whether then some other economic related characteristics.
The population census is the largest data collection implemented in Myanmar by the government. The UNFPA will provide the technical assistance and advice on the designs of census questionnaire and the Identification of data processing technology, mapping, development of publicity, advocacy and communication campaigns. The census will be counted on every person from the newly born babies to the oldest persons, including nationals and non-nationals in Myanmar in 2014. So we all are duty bound to participate in 2014 a population and census collection in Myanmar so as to get the correct data for the nation development projects.